galley had advantages in the Mediterranean because until steam engines were invented in the middle of the 19th century. So for all of history, the only two ways of getting around on the ocean were the sails and rowing. So if you have a sailing trading vessel that's sailing from England to Turkey to pick up a cargo of spices, it's going to have to tack back and forth across the Mediterranean, right? Because the wind's not always behind it. So that means it's going to have to zigzag across the Mediterranean, coming fairly close to North Africa on the southward legs of the tacks. And if the wind died, out come rowing Moroccan pirates with slaves rowing. And the slaves would be chained to the galley, and they would not leave it until they were dead. Then they would be thrown thrown overboard. But the galley slaves were chained to the galley. So even among the gradations of being a slave, you could also, if you had a good skill, you could be purchased for a lot of money if you were, had some kind of a technical skill or ability, and you could be put to work. For example, the European slaves in North Africa, it was common that they would have about a 50-pound chain, 10 feet long, 50 pounds in weight, shackled to their ankle permanently. So you couldn't run away. You would have to carry this chain over your shoulders while you left your master's domicile to go to wherever he had made a bargain with somebody for you to work. But you couldn't escape because you had this 20-pound or 50 pounds of chain that you had to carry over your shoulders. When you got to your place of work, they would just shackle you to your machine.
Wait, Matt, I have a question. Why wouldn't you want more Muslims to come to the United States?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sure. But we're in this fantasy realm where we are putting 110-pound women in combat units. I mean, if we weren't in fantasy mode, it would make more sense to say, hey, just as an experiment, why don't we tell the NFL that every NFL team needs 3 women on the offense and defense at all times? That would be fair. Yeah, there could be a running back or a wide receiver, and nobody gets killed because it's just football. And you won't lose a war because you found out it's a really stupid idea, right? That when the 140-pound cornerback tries to tackle the 200-pound fullback, she winds up in the hospital. She's just not built for it. But
or you really take affirmative action seriously to the NBA, and you put out of 10 players, 7 have to be white.
Right, or at least half, and they won't do that. But they'll in something that's truly important, like the military, they'll put women in combat units. So it's a marker, it's an indicator of how off the rails and detached from reality our process has become, where literally diversity is at the top of the top issue, and right under diversity is our strength. Is click here to report racism and microaggressions. So and the ships are running into other ships because incompetent morons are on the bridge because the captain is much more afraid of the diversity commissar than of consequences of the ship running into something.
So what is it? So then the $1 million question is, you look at, where does this problem originate? I think it happens in between the mother and the father, right? They're sitting around watching TV, and they're watching a sitcom, and the dopes are always men and boys. They're clueless.
But we unintentionally or intentionally, I don't know if it matters, but we really perverted the biological role. Once 2 things happened. One was the birth control pill and other forms of it used to be women had to keep their legs together. You couldn't just be run around Sue, or you'd be like unwed mother run around Sue in a unwed mother's home, right?
Right. Who wants to marry you?
Yeah, and now what? So there was a stigma, and the stigma had a purpose, which was discourage it. That went away. Now you're proud to be a 16-year-old with 3 kids and no father, because you get a paycheck for it. The government gets more of what they pay for, so they get more unwed mothers. And the other thing is abortion on demand. So sex was completely detached from, becoming a wife and having a family. Something like, it's been a reverse process in the last like 50 years. Something like, it's gone from like more than 70% of women get married and have children to about less than 30%. It's really a huge thing. We talk about, for example, like China having the one-child policy leading to selective abortion of females, and the consequence is that they've got tens of millions of too many men, right? Which never happened in history. Well, we can put the mirror on our own selves and just the West in general and say, it's never happened where you had, half of your women make it out of their 30s. They've never been married and never had children. You see Antifa and BLM and the craziness, the total social dysfunction. When these women become college professors, and corporate bosses, they have a lot of daddy issues. I read an article about this today. It was kind of a profane article, but it made a lot of good points. When a boy grows up, he has conflict with his dad, right? But he becomes a man, and then he can understand what his dad went through. He gets married, has children. Now it makes sense what his father did. When a woman doesn't get married, she carries these daddy issues to her grave. And a lot of what women do is whatever will make daddy mad. Because daddy never came along and married her, which was nature's plan was a great guy comes along and you make a home together and have children. That's nature's plan, God or nature. But when you have more than half of women saying, oh no, the career is my thing, I don't care about children, they carried that daddy issue. And subconsciously, there's this bitterness that when they see a happy homemaker with children, right?
Oh my God.
Smiling in the park.
Yeah.
Some women will say with regret, I'm really sorry I didn't do that. I made a mistake. But a lot of women will say, you stupid breeder, you're just a slave of the patriarchy. And these women do everything they can to destroy the patriarchy. For example, let's have open borders. Even though it's going to wreck the country, it's going to really hurt white men. If we bring in...
What's that all about, man? Why this insane...
Whatever is going to hurt the white male patriarchy, that's what these bitter, unencumbered, unattached cat ladies are going to go for. Whatever angers white men the most. So that's why they're so prevalent in these Antifa marches. When you see them, it's a ton of fat women and cat ladies wearing the black. Ugly cat ladies.
Mannish women.
So they take their subconscious rage is directed at the best system that ever happened. And it's funny because we just quote unquote celebrated the 19th Amendment. And there's a strong argument to be made. Once women got the vote, the country's on the road to ruin. Because no, seriously, because on average, women are much more emotional. Men would have never said, we can't just let in tens of millions from the third world. They don't even speak Spanish. They don't even, forget English. They speak Quajado. You know what I mean? You need five translators. They're like they've got 5 kids. None of them speak Spanish or English. And they've all got special needs. This one's got webbed toes. This one's got a cleft palate. The men would say, I'm sorry, we can't afford it. Okay?
Oh, absolutely.
The women say, I feel so sorry for them. Why can't we take care of them? The mother instinct.
Sure.
And they never had their own kids. They never had their own children. So they riot for BLM because they think, the evil white people are putting little Hispanic children in cages.
Yeah, so you know what happens, Matt? They don't know what parents go through with a child. You bring them into the emergency room, and there are kids from, south of the border that are bringing in some really dangerous infections that the United States is not accustomed to dealing with, and they come down with like a paralyzing infection. The kids become semi-paralyzed. Thank you very much. And that BLM or that Antifa babe with pink hair, she has no clue about what parents are going through. None.
Right. That's right. Because she's just a lone operator. And the only time she feels validated is when she's with the black bloc and she's got the loudspeaker
Yeah,
screaming
and so when
about
she's
the evil patriarchy.
right, when she's able to crap on the parade of white families or families in general.
And the big problem is it's much easier to blow up a structure, a society, than to build one. You know, it takes thousands of years to learn what Western civilization learned to build these great civilizations, recognizing that there's no perfect utopia. And every time the socialists have struck out to form a perfect utopia, it wound up with guillotines, gas chambers, and gulags every time, killing fields every time. So the maturity, and this is mainly all built before women got to vote. The maturity part was, yes, it would be great to just let the whole world in. It would be great to if women could just have sex with no consequences and do whatever the hell they want. But it turns out to be ruinous for a society in the long run. Ruinous. And people can say, oh, but it's just not fair. Okay, when the water system breaks down, you know, there are cities covered in jungle all over Central and South America, where the natives, when the conquistadors got there, and the natives pointed out these ruins, the natives didn't even know who lived there or what had gone on there or when it all happened, because you can build a city and then have a civil war and it goes back to the jungle.
And Machu Picchu.
And when we have a modern water delivery system, just for one example, people, just because it's been their normalcy bias and their expectation for their entire lives, their parents' lives, you can watch movies from 100 years ago, and they had a tap and a bathtub and water came out. So it's almost beyond comprehension that if you have a civil war and the power grid goes down, because everybody gets to vote on the grid in the Civil War because it's so easy to shoot transformers, number one, okay?
Yeah.
If your enemy across the river has power, their lights are on at night and yours aren't, somebody's going to swim over there and shoot a power transformer just out of spite, period. And you've got the engineers that normally commute 20 miles out of the city to work at the power plant. They're no longer commuting because that road is full of bandits. So when you can look at Central Africa, as bad as the colonies were, in terms of how they mistreated blacks, especially the Belgian Congo, they had a power grid and they had railroad tracks. They had cities with power. And a lot of that just went back to the jungle. And it will be really a shame if the people that are trying to force a socialist utopia down everybody's throat, with threats and anger and riots and arson and burning, looting, if they get what they want, which is a civil war, the power grid goes down, food distribution is broken. We could be like the Balkans. We can be like Bosnia.
Sure.
And
Rwanda.
Bosnia and Rwanda together, because there'll be that racial component. And it's going to be, wow, the patriarchy wasn't really that bad. Even though I was an unhappy cat lady, it was pretty nice having air conditioning and running water. It was pretty nice. I could walk down the street and I didn't just get attacked and enslaved.
Well, Matt, let me tell you something. Here I am, I live in Peru. And I remember my times, living in New York, where you had to always be watching these crazy ass psychos coming into the train. You never know what they're going to do next. I walked down the street in Peru, supposedly a third world country. And I don't think, with one exception, I had a laptop computer in an office. The office was broken into, and my briefcase was carried off, and I had the laptop in there. I lost it. That's it. In 11 years, and maybe somebody passed me a bad bill.
And
okay.
Can a woman ride on a bus without being grabbed?
yes and no. Because
I mean maliciously. I don't mean like accidentally, on purpose bumping into her or something.
let me tell you,
is a woman afraid to walk down the street? Does it depend on where
some
you're
will,
living?
some will listen. Some will say they are, and then there's these campaigns against, sexual harassment in the street. But for the most part, when somebody gets into a bus, let's say a pregnant lady, 2 or 3 people get up simultaneously to offer her a seat.
Right.
So it's a completely different mentality. Or an elderly person, same deal.
Like where I live in Northeast Florida, we have like jogging trails that are parallel to roads, like bike paths, things like that.
Yeah.
And it's an observation that I've made in general after traveling to, pretty good number of countries and different parts of America. When I see, 2 or 3, like, teenage girls, like high school girls out jogging together, and it's like in a place next to the railroad tracks with trees and streams, I think this is a good country. This is a good country. They have no expectation that like a van load of, maleantes is going to,
Sure.
bad guys are just going to like roll up and grab them. Yeah, they feel safe. They are safe. There's not going to be.
Okay, but Matt,
And
in Minneapolis,
to me, that's a yardstick of civilization.
Sure. Well,
Or
for the
an
most
older
part,
woman, an older woman can go walk her dog and not feel like she's going to get punched in the face, like what might happen in New York now.
of course, yeah. See, that's the thing; it's changing. And you go to Minneapolis, or
Right.
well, I was born in upstate New York. There's a city in upstate New York. You go there, and it's inundated with ISIS. Inundated. City of 60,000 people, Utica, New York. Inundated with ISIS. It's so bad that people who go to the welfare office for SSI or food stamps or whatever, they're not Muslims. They're not from Somalia or some country. They can't be understood. And they're not only are they not understood, nobody really wants to take care of them. They want to take care of the Muslim immigrants first because they are the supervisors as well, because they have to be the translators. So they start to ascend in the pecking order. And so guess what? It's, the Americans get the short end of the stick. Too bad.
And not only that, but the guy who becomes a translator, this happens pretty commonly.
Yeah.
His translation, because they'll do things where they bring in another translator who speaks Somali, for example, unknown to the official Somali translator.
Yeah, right. A dialect.
What they're really saying is these stupid Americans think that you two are married, and they have no way to tell that you're not, and they have no way to. And you can put down that you have 12
cousins.
children, right?
Your brother and sister.
They'll say on this form, say you have 12 children because you'll get more money. They won't check. You know what I mean? They're advising. So they come to this country, which opens its doors to them, and their advice is how to rip off this country. I read a terrific book last week that was sent to me called 9 Years Among the Indians. So it was a guy who was an 11-year-old boy kidnapped at like age 11 in 1870. And he spends all that time with Apaches and then Comanches. And it gave me a lot of insights about, if you take a civilized person and drop them in among savages, how does that go down? Well, when you take a savage and drop them down among civilized people, an acculturated savage, they think that the civilized people are fools and suckers, that they just leave their valuables out to be stolen, that they leave girls out to be raped. You know what I mean? Like it's like taking a wolf mentality and dropping it into a sheepfold. And you're telling the sheep, all animals are the same. This wolf is just a sheep with a different color, get different kind of teeth. But if you say anything about it being a wolf, then you're anti-wolf. You're like a racist. You should give this wolf all the love. And then the wolf eats a sheep, and the other sheep say, well, he couldn't help it. It was too much. We didn't do enough. We didn't do enough for the wolf to make him feel at home. So it was our fault that he ate a sheep. Then he eats another sheep, and we do this, and it's rinse, repeat. We didn't do enough for this wolf. We got to bring in, if we brought in more wolves, he'll be more comfortable. So I blame the people who brought the wolves into our country because they knew really what was going to happen. It's all part of a destabilization process, and intentionally wrecking it. It's like somebody you've hired as a
Sure.
mechanic, but he's secretly pouring sand into the, in the transmission,
And oh
and
gosh,
he
man.
knows why he's doing it.
Sure, man. So
And then, and if you catch him at it, he'll say, "You just hate me because I'm not from your country, so you can't even say
no,
anything."
yeah, absolutely. That's all the time. That's all the time. We're starting to hear that here in Peru. I mean, my daughter, she's Hispanic, but very light skinned. They refer to her as the La Blanca. You're white. You're white. They'll say you're white. And so and because the Black Lives Matter mentality of victimhood is coming down to Peru. So it's like a virus, an
Yes, it is.
ideological virus.
Cultural
That
Marxism, and it's
yeah.
very effective. It's very strong. And you can make an argument. Look, no matter where you look, the U.S. military can never be corrupted by it. Yes, it has.
Oh,
Our
it
ship
already
accidents
is.
prove it. In 20 years,
No, but
and
sure. Well,
there'll
no,
be a catastrophe before 20 years is up. But there's many other metrics of this collapse. 2/3 of women never having children. They're bitter. They hate the whole thing. They want to blow it all up.
yeah. So
When
what
they
do men
get
do? If they're lucky enough to find an American girl that's worth marrying, who wants to have a family and esteems the company of a man, right, and loves a manly man, you're lucky. But if not, you go
then they're in a minority. But then they're
you,
automatically in a minority, and they're
right.
attacked by all of these, childless cat ladies for being a tool of the patriarchy. They call
Hey,
breeders.
oh my gosh, man.
What's the alternative? They're going to destroy Rome. They are going
No,
to,
absolutely, man.
and when the water stops flowing, our cities are going to absolutely explode. Because when
Well,
you have
Matt,
when you have a
yeah,
functioning beehive, and
it's
you
okay.
only see 2 or 3 bees flying in and out, but there's really 1,000 bees inside,
Right.
that's when it's a functioning beehive, because 900 and some are in there making honey, and 100 are out flying around gathering nectar, and
Yeah, sure,
just 2 or 3 are flying in and out that you notice. If you
sure.
plug that thing up, or if you hit it and knock it on the ground, now you're going to see what 1,000 bees without a beehive do.
Oh, they freak out, right? And so, and you think when you go look at this. What are the implications, Matt? What are the implications of having a society where the average woman produces 1.7 children or 1.6 children? It's in demographic decline. There's no economic vitality. Look at Japan. Japan is in this perpetual slump. I mean, sure, they've
Yeah,
got brilliant people.
Japan at least made the rational decision not to replace themselves with foreigners that hate them. So
Oh, of course, I think that's great.
Japan
But
decided to go on to, I think it's a higher intelligence solution. They decided to invest more in things like robotics, and other ways to not need as many people, as opposed to saying, why don't we bring in 1 million Somalis, because they're just like us, and if we show Somalis enough love, I'm sure they'll learn Japanese and be just like traditional Japanese in a generation or two. They were
I'm
smart
sure they'll
enough.
welcome kimonos.
Yeah, they'll love it, and they'll be very respectful to our women and our elderly. See, we were suicidal in our. It's called suicidal altruism.
And
You
look
know,
at
you're
exactly. And
you're in
the
a you're
proof
in
of
a canoe. You're in a canoe with 3 people already, and here's 20 people on the shore saying, "Save us!" And you say, "No, we got to keep paddling." The boat
hey,
can't
man,
hold 20. That's suicidal altruism. And
the emblem of that,
before
Matt.
women got the vote, men understood this.
Yeah, and it's true. Men would say, "Well, what the hell? I'm going to let in all these workers who are going to push down my wages 30 or 40%. Why? Why do that? Right? Why do that? A bunch of Venezuelans come in or whatever the nationality, but in a country where in a month you earn $500 and you consider doing pretty good. So then they come to the States and they can earn 1,000. They're freaking happy, and they're writing all their cousins and their friends to come come on down,
But
man. Come up.
when the country, not just America, any country, when 80% of adults get married and have children, there's always going to be, they just didn't work out, they're loners, they really ugly, or some tragic
Right.
circumstance, or they're gay maybe. But
Yeah.
if when 80% get married and have children, the 20% are so insignificant because the cultural center of gravity is the family. And
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
the and that ballast keeps the whole society upright. And the 20% running around can't tip over the boat. The 20% pretty much have to go with the program because everything is set up to deal with the family. And it doesn't mean like you can't come into Walmart if you're by yourself, like you have to be with your husband and children, right? But society is set up tax-wise, and the suburbs are laid out for families.
Yeah,
You
sure.
can still
That's
be fine as a bachelor or a spinster, but when you have 70% spinsters, the ballast is gone. Now
yeah,
they're
sure.
running around the ship and tipping it over.
Well, look, remember I don't know if, I think she was a spinster, Ida Mae Fuller. You know who Ida Mae Fuller is? Have you heard her story, Matt?
No. Mm-mm.
Ida Mae Fuller, this is incredible. You've probably heard about her. She was the first recipient, Social Security recipient 001, who paid into the system like, $24 a year. And then she retired. She was about to, they implemented Social Security in about, 1935. So she got enrolled. She paid in a few years. And then at 62, or I guess, she retired. And she got back about 22,000, almost 23,000 in benefits and she lived to, I think she was 100 years old when she died. And so this is now the thing is, well, why is he talking about this? I'm talking about it because when you have a culture like we did in the 1930s and 40s and 50s with big families, well, you've got a triangle where you have the retirees up at the top, and that's thinner and smaller at the apex than at the base. At the base, it's huge. You've got kids that are 14 years old that are working.
People only live to be 65 or 70.
Exactly, yeah. A lot of them died pretty young. And so they've received Social Security 5 years, maybe 6, 7, maybe 10. But the thing is that you always had this, basically a Ponzi scheme with kids. I mean, look, when I was born about the same time you were. When I was 14, I was working and paying Social Security. I'd work at a country club, or I'd get a job doing, I don't know, working somewhere. And lots and lots, millions of kids did that. In fact, I remember when I was in college, there was a kid who had a summer job on a farm. Those jobs, where are they? They're gone. They're in the hands of somebody from outside the country that comes to the United States and does it. Whereas, people say, well, Americans don't do those jobs. Well, no, they don't do these jobs for the same wages that others will do those jobs. So, a farm has to adapt to the fact that they have to hire an American to do this, and you have to pay them, instead of paying them $8 an hour, $7 an hour, $6 an hour, you pay them 10 or 15 and you give them a place to stay. So then you have workers, or you just have more children if you're a farmer. There's lots of advantages to a big family. So Ida Mae Fuller is what happens to a society that doesn't regard as very important the whole issue of having a lot of people paying the Social Security. Now, I mean, she even, at some point, she was even starting to feel bad. I think they gave her a pay increase or a Social Security benefits increase in the 50s. And he was like, oh man, this is kind of like, I'm really getting a lot of money. I'm getting too much, She had a,
the Ponzi scheme that we're involved in, and it's, you can widen it out and include like college debt, people that right now because of COVID, we're going to have practically a year of landlords not getting rent that they can't evict anybody. Okay. They're like California is extending it until like next January that you cannot evict anybody. So if you're a landlord,
amazing.
So this is like how a city turns into, Belgian Congo real fast, because a landlord that has no money is not paying his mortgage on the building, right? He is certainly not going to give a damn about fixing your toilet. or the cracks in the wall, or when somebody's tub overflows and the ceiling is ruined. The land, so a lot of people are like abandoning the buildings. The owners are just absconding, right? The guy who's got a mortgage on an apartment building is seeing financial ruin. He's saying, I'm taking my savings and I'm going down to Mexico and live at the beach. The hell with this place. They won't even let me evict the tenants that haven't paid me in 8 months.
Yeah, or he goes from basically landlord to slumlord.
Right. If he even sticks around, or he sells it to somebody, he sells a note to somebody who is a slumlord. So this is a real fast process of degeneration. And you've got, the ongoing, the pensions. I mean, California, the number of people that are making better than six-figure pensions, they have all the government union employees, they're all union. They make like 110% of their best year forever.
Oh my gosh, man.
So they get like a pay raise when they retire. So you've got all these cops that are making $100,000 a year and they retire at 50 and they're going to go till they're 90. The math doesn't work at all.
No, it does, Matt. Wait, you know how it works? You inflate the currency, my friend.
Right, but then you've got Weimar Germany, and you've got people won't deliver food if they're paid in worthless scrip. This we know all the way back to the French Revolution, when they did away with hard currency, with silver currency, and replaced it with the assignat, paper money, and they would cut your head off if you tried to buy something with silver. And the assignats just got inflated like Weimar or Zimbabwe or Venezuela currency. Well, farmers don't farm if they're not going to get value for it. You can confiscate the wheat in the field once or twice, like the Ukraine with the Soviets. But then the farmer just says, forget it. I know how to farm enough just to keep my family alive and hide it. But I am not going to farm 1,000 acres if they're just going to take it. They're going to demand that I give it to them for paper that I can't buy anything with.